The latest episode of Laochra Gael airs on Thursday evening on TG Car, and it stars Aidan O'Mahony. Aidan, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, lads.
How has this whole experience been for you?
I think it's like one of those things, George, when you agree to do something, you're halfway through and you're kind of saying, why did I agree to do that? I'd say on Thursday, I kind of have, I suppose, one eye open, but look, you look forward to it. It's obviously, it's a nice thing to do. I know like Kieran did it there now as well, and they're great shows, but obviously you're nervous as well because you're going to be getting a lot of, I suppose, opinions on the whole documentary. But look, at the same time, I suppose people will get an insight into the person maybe outside of the jersey.
I was going to say, the phone call comes from the producers of Laochra Gael, and you're like, yeah, oh, absolutely, oh, that's amazing. And then the next day you're like, oh shit, I have to talk about all the stuff I don't want to talk about.
Exactly, yeah. So I think it's like everything, they're very good to draw you in at the start. And then there's that mentioning things are like, all right, we put that in, we leave that out. But look, I suppose after writing the book, there wasn't much I could actually leave out. But it was enjoyable, Joe. Like, first, I think, recording it was up in our sheep farm in Gilroy, and it was actually, we were looking at the same day, my brother was actually dosing a sheep. I said it was funny, I was in a pair of shorts and the top that you obviously wouldn't wear if you were.
I was going to say, I've seen a good bit of it. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I've seen about 40 minutes of the hour, and the shot of you with your brother fully properly dressed for farming, and you in your tiny little white runners with the socks barely visible. I'm not even sure if there were socks. I was like, that's not farming gear. This guy's not a farmer.
I said, what are the chances to land back to a white Converse? And then he's dosing sheep, and I said, this isn't going to go down too well now. People see it. Yeah, but it was nice. Look, that's why I grew up. My brother Noel obviously stayed on the farm, and it was kind of special to see that day. It hasn't changed where all the neighbours kind of would come around and give you a hand to dose the sheep, and you would have to go and do theirs. It was like the bog. It was very similar, but it was nice to get it in. It was actually very special to get it in, yeah.
I did, because the narration, the voiceover at that point talks about growing up in this rural idyll, and I do think that we have this tendency to fetishise rural life as like being amazing, but actually it's really difficult, and rural isolation is a real thing. And the importance of the GAA club for you growing up to not just be on the farm running up the mountain all day, but actually to socialise you and the rest of the young men of rural Ireland is something I think is kind of, it comes across a little bit in it.
It was a release, yeah, because it would have been very easily, I think, growing up on the farm, where everything becomes about the farm, as I said, after school, into the car, back to Gilroy, and back then there was no tractors. You couldn't actually travel. If you got a good view of that place, you'd see the tractor can't go up the fields and stuff. So everything that had to go up, whether it was timber or nuts or hay, had to be carried on your shoulders. So obviously the GA thing then was, like, as I always said, I wasn't one of those lads that wanted to be the next Mikey Sheehy or, Bomber Lister and these guys. I didn't even think I'd play football. But I think when you were young, you had a bike, you start travelling, and we just started cycling to Rabig and getting involved underage and stuff. So I was kind of released well from that. But at the same time, look, where I grew up, farming was a huge part of society and the community.
It's funny, Aidan, because there's a lovely cinematic shot in the episode as well, and you kind of think of the Cork-Kerry rivalry and as something that ebbs and flows, and at times, certainly in the mid-noughties, it was quite heated. Maybe not so at the moment, but that Blackwater Bridge that separates Knocknagree in Cork and your own parish in Rathmore, it kind of highlights, like, you're one of those people who lived very close to the Cork-Kerry border. So the rivalry to you probably was always there.
Yeah, and it was great. It actually made the Kerry Cork derbies even more special when you're living at the border. The only worrying thing now is I have a nephew actually playing fullback from Cork, with Cork from Knocknagree. He's on the other side of the border now, but it's amazing how things turn out. But like that, yeah, there were special days. Like, I suppose for Rathmore, there's a split between the two parishes, and there's that massive divide. So they made the days more special for us, obviously, with some tough days as well, having to go back to Rathmore after losing. And like even Nola Lera there, I was talking to him last week, you make unbelievable friendships out of it. Like, I was one of those players, like, yeah, I always played in nation, and I wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but at the same time, once it stayed in the pitch, that was it for me. You know, we all had a job to do. We had a job to do for the team. And those Kerry Cork games, there was massive battles, because I remember even under Conor Coonan, they were one of the greatest Cork teams I've seen. Like, they were never beaten. I know, yeah, they won All-Ireland, but every year they kept coming back. They turned us over, but both from Parky, Queeve. You know, we didn't get beaten in Blarney, but they drew us, I think, once or twice. So we had some massive battles, and look, neither team took a step back from each other. I think there's a healthy respect from those both teams for each other then.
The team that you were part of, there was a wildness to you all coming through. There was on the team yourself, Galvin, Tomas O'Shea. You never quite knew exactly what you were going to get as the opponent, but you knew that it was going to be fiercely fought and fiercely contested. I can only imagine what the training is like.
Yeah, so like Jack, I think, had a good way about him as well, and he's a good way of kind of controlling this at the best of times. I actually met him during the summer this year. I think he was kind of pinching himself with the group he is now. So tame. But so it was, look, everyone wants, like, I think, Joe, when you get in first with Kerry, it's about hanging in there and trying to get through the hard training and proving that you're worthy of being inside there. Then when you get through that part of it, it's about getting a jersey, and that's no different to anyone in Kerry. Like that, there's that selfish element. You get through the hard training, get through the hard slog, then you want a jersey. You want to be on that first 15, and you play to your strengths. And as I said, look, myself and Paul came in 2004 with Jack. We probably brought a different element. They'd have probably seen after 2003 with Tyrone. Look, Tomas, what can we say about Tomas? He's just one of the greatest footballers of all time, you know. And he was a leader in the dressing room as well when he spoke. Everything was articulate, and you know, it meant so much. So all these lads, I think, to grow up and play with them, you know, looking back now, it was amazing, because they just had so many strengths. And yeah, look, there was a wildness to us as well, like, but I suppose it was part of who we were.
That 98 All-Ireland semi-final between Kerry and Kildare features as well. Aidan, I know you were playing in the minor team, I think, that day, and watching the senior game afterwards clearly left an indelible mark on you as well.
Yeah, I came up to that All-Ireland semi-final. I broke my nose a few weeks before it, the first time in mini, and I missed out on the final, but got to play in 10 minutes in an All-Ireland final. I suppose as a young lad, you don't expect it, and then you're brought on. But just watching him coming out after, it was exceptional. Like, it was like these kind of gladiators coming out through the tunnel, and like the conditioning of them, and just like you could just see in their faces the emotion and what that whole thing meant. And something like definitely that day kind of stuck me, saying, geez, I want some of that. But at the same time, I was kind of being realistic as well. I think I was number 21 or 22 for Kerry minor, so they were looking at that and they were kind of saying that's a long way off. But look, that's, I suppose, for any young lad to kind of say that if you don't make underage and minors or under 20s and stuff, it's not the end of the world. You know, there's always time to make it.
And you end up being man of the match in an All-Ireland final. The one that I wanted to talk to you about, though, was the Donegal game, where you've been a stalwart of the team, an all-star, and then you've come out of the team for various reasons, which we can get into, and then you're back in the team, and you're tasked with the job of man-marking Michael Murphy in an All-Ireland final. Like, if you talk to anybody who knows anything about Ulster football, they would have Michael Murphy at the absolute apex of impact and talent and, like, character. You know, he's basically, there's him and Canavan are kind of the gods of, they're definitely on Ulster football's Mount Rushmore. And yet, there's no way you win that All-Ireland without your performance that day. What's the build-up to that like? What's in your head? Like, how do you perfect what you're going to have to do, and how do you make peace with, like, your job is just to be the destroyer on the day?
Yeah, so, geez, destroyer is a very hard word, John. Look, for me, there was a story into that All-Ireland, I think it was 2 years. My dad passed away in 2012, and after we buried him, we did a county challenge game at home, and I made a promise to him that I'd get up the steps of the Hogan in his memory. And sometimes you make these promises and they don't come true. And like the last conversation I had with him before he passed away was my 17 niece were coming home from the All-Ireland final in Donegal playing Mayo, and he was speaking about Michael Murphy in the goal, and he actually spoke about Aidan O'Shea as well. He was speaking about it to them, and we didn't get to speak again. And I remember the way 2014 unravelled. 2013 I got a bad injury and I thought it was finished, and 2014 I was just hell-bent on fulfilling that promise. And then the way it unravelled, the semi-final, I got to mark Aidan O'Shea, and then lo and behold, Michael Murphy's there in the final. So all of a sudden our phone call was popping up. And for me, that day, I was just, I put in a massive year, I suppose, work-wise, training-wise, everything was done to T. I was always one of those players that if we were training at 6:30, I'd be there for 5 o'clock. I loved walking out in the pitch of our stadium for maybe 20 minutes on my own. I'd say the players thought I was mad, but that's who I was. I was always there then. And then everything was based around that final. And the night before, Eamon had a great way about him where we did meetings and we just kind of a promise thing. And I just said that I'd mark Michael Murphy out of the game. And I think I said it 3 times, and it wasn't being an arrogance. I just kind of walked out the door after saying, why did you say that? You're actually putting way more pressure on yourself. And look, the game Michael Murphy is, like, for me, on the pitch and off the pitch, he's one of the top guys in the jail. Absolutely. I have so much respect for him. We had so many battles. I remember being above the Belly Buffet in all these places, like, and it's snowing, and I look at him saying, oh God, he's the last guy I want to see come in and top me today. And that day, look, things just worked out for me. You know, I was just, I suppose, you're kind of driven insane to succeed, and I knew myself that if I failed at my task, I'd fail the team. And like, that's the kind of pressure you need to put yourself on in big games. As you said, with all the work done, I had all that in my mind. I was in a healthy place. And it was just going out there and doing everything possible, I suppose, to mark him out of the game and just to play in his coattails. And we were talking about the loops and let's get him on the ball. And look, it all worked out fine when the rest were doing their job then. Like, so I was only a small cog in that All-Ireland final, but I still had that job to do, and I was relishing it, I suppose, leading into the 3 weeks leading into it.
The bit you talk about your dad in that, like, we listened to Rory McIlroy yesterday talking about his battle was to not let the emotion of who he was fighting against prevent him from playing well. How do you stop your grief from interfering and your desire not to let down your dad and the promise you made from actually? So how do you separate those two things? Use it as an inspiration, but equally not let it overawe you.
Yeah, I remember when I walked away in 2010 when Dash Sherry, like, I was mentally in a weak and a bad place. And I remember when my dad passed away in 2012, I think all those moments in 2010 helped me to, I suppose, get over it and to deal with it. And I suppose to turn something where for me it was sport, and my dad would keep all the clippings of games and stuff, but to turn something like that into positive, and then to go on a journey for him, to repay him for all, I suppose, everything he'd given for me and all those years of cutting out pieces of papers and going to games. And I said the biggest thing I could ever give to my dad was, after coming home from games, you know, some people always say to me, sometimes he should give you a kick up the arse to see what you cop on, but he didn't. He said nothing. You know, he was a positive man, and that really, I suppose, was embraced by me. So in that 2014 final, it was very easy, I suppose, unattach myself from that promise because I had a job to do, and I knew that I wouldn't fulfill it unless I completed my job that day. So it was very easy to separate the two.
There's an incredible scene where you're leafing through those scrapbooks. Did you know that the scrapbooks existed, or did you only find out afterwards that he'd kept every scrap of paper and every match report?
Yeah, I knew he had, I suppose, some paper and stuff like that, but I didn't know, I suppose, the extent of what he had collected. And like, when he retired from work, we were sitting rooms at the front of our house, and I used to come home from the park and I'd have to go down to the sitting from my bedroom, and he'd be inside watching the games. You'd hear the matches about a mile down the road. He'd come up to the last, and he'd be watching all the games. It was like analysis before his time. And next, I hate watching the games, so he'd pause it when I come in. And I come in, he'd talk away about gamble training. And I go back out the door again, I sit into the car next to hear the video blaring inside. So he loved it, was part of his life, but just to get the scrapbooks and to see what amount of work he'd put in, because I'd say he'd every bit of blue tack and glue in Ratmore bought. I'd say to put in all that stuff into those scrapbooks, but they're amazing to look back on, and he was an amazing man.
In one of the low points, and look, you speak very eloquently about your mental health struggles in the documentary as well. it was 2005, so after the All-Ireland final loss to Tyrone, and again it's covered in the book. We have the copy of the book here in studio with us today, if I can get in the shot there. Unbroken, and that really is a word that springs to mind, because you failed the drugs test in 05 after the final, salbutamol, which was a banned substance. Then you get the therapeutic use exemption because, of course, your battles with asthma as well, as something that's covered heavily in the early part of the documentary. But that must have been, post 2005 All-Ireland final, quite a low point for you.
It was actually 08.
08, sorry, after the final.
Yeah. So it was, but I think even leading up to those, even the diving incident and the asthma, I think my mind was in a bad place. And it wasn't even those incidents. It was, I suppose, not dealing with stuff, I suppose, coming through the years. And the asthma thing, it was tough, because I'm one of those people, I've a quiet nature, and when you grow up in that kind of a background, you don't know how to deal with these things, and it's very easy to kind of put on a show or a front for people, because, as I'm always saying, when I played with Kerry, you played in the edge and you played in the line, and you think that you need to show that to people as well, that you're not. Where I look back now and say, I respect myself for what I did, and I respect my family for, I suppose, backing me. And when I was in that mindset back then, I was saying, geez, if I do this, if I do that, it'd be shown as a weakness. And then the inhaler thing came along, and it kind of flattened me, because it went on for 4 months. I lost total form in football, and I actually had much interest in the GA at the time then. And then it showed in 2009, I got dropped from the championship after the month's final. And it went from one to the other. And when you're in that kind of mindset, you're kind of saying, geez, why me? And why are all these things happening? And I couldn't tease them things out back then. And as I said, 2010, I just had to step away from it. I remember going out after games, and you're out socialising, and you're crying because all these emotions are coming up, and you're not enjoying life and stuff like that. And it comes to a head, and as I said, and we spoke about my dad there, the morning I went to Ashery, my dad was at the kitchen table crying, and for a man of his generation to be like that and to show those emotions just showed me that the position or the place I was in at the time. And I think reflecting back on the book and on Laochra Gael, that was the hardest thing for me. I suppose reliving that and probably saying to myself, how do you let yourself get to that position? But at the same time, I suppose I kind of have to give myself some of the kudos for coming out the other side of it, not going down a path that, I didn't know where I was going to go.
What's the turning point for getting out of that?
The turning point is just, I suppose, dropping your barrier or dropping your guard and getting help. And I suppose we've great now team sports psychology is so important. And I do courses there through Kerry J, and you just see the importance of what these people bring to groups and panels. And I know we had sports psychology back then. I didn't use it because I thought I was above that and stuff. And then I wasn't dealing with all these things. And I was letting them snowball, and it was turning my life upside down. As I said at the time, I wasn't a nice person to be around. I was distant from my family, but I was just continuing life. It was no different. So your turning point is just being able to communicate with people. And I think, we did a seminar there a couple of weeks ago, Tony Griffin. It was just fantastic to see someone just drop everything and talk about themselves, because it makes you more open as well. And I can see now from a football side or a sports side that if you have a team of people that you know about, what they've done or what they've accomplished or what they've gone through, then you're more open to them as well. And when you want to pitch in, you're back with your life.
That's the fundamental part of this for me, Aidan, is that you might even have been an even better footballer than the multiple All-Ireland winner, All-Star, man of the match in an All-Ireland final if you discovered this as a 16-year-old. That came out wrong, but I guess what I'm saying is that you didn't have to have that anger to be the player you were. If you listen to Wayne Rooney now, for example, he talks about his anger management problems, and they cost him even more achievements than he already had. And when that's somebody at that ultra high level, and you're at a similar level in GAA, where your desire is to win All Ireland and you can do it, and your desire is to help your teammates be Player of the Year and you can do it, that we probably need a bit of a culture shift to get to the point where you don't need to be angry all the time to be your best.
No, but I suppose you need to you need to have players. I always say this. I think it's a good way of putting it. Someone said before, you need fellas in the pitch that do the dirty work for the rest of them to shine. So I probably look at it that way, George. But no, like I think you're right in two ways. In that, like for me, I hadn't in my mind to play football at an elite level growing up, or at 15 and 16 years of age. I was getting more fun out of soccer. I love soccer. I have no problem saying that. And I just think the way things happen, I think everything happens in life for a reason, Jordan. And I think I wouldn't change anything. Yeah, look, we've regrets. You deal with them, you tease them out, and you see why did it happen, and you need to move on. Like, life is precious. I know myself now. I've 2 kids at home, 3.5, 5.5. I gone into hurling management to really put another, I suppose, challenge in front of me. And you know, that's the importance. The importance is your family then, and your sporting career is your sporting career. And you look back and say, yeah, you know, I had my challenges there. You know, I gave what I could for the Kerry jersey, and I genuinely did. So like, as I said, blood, sweat and tears. I knew that when I ran that jersey, there's an onus on you that every day you go out, you're expected to win. And I'm always saying, it's not an arrogance down here. It's what's expected. If you don't win all Irelands, it's seen as a failure. And it's a good thing in life as well, because it makes you, I suppose, it makes you more driven. And whatever you put your mind to in after you finish your sporting career, like I'm in the fitness business now, and even my work as a community policing in Tralee, like, it's important for me to be open when I get to schools and talking to people. And I think people can be more open with me then as well, especially young people, that they're not seeing Aidan O'Mahony, 5-time All-Ireland winner, walking in the gate saying, oh sure, it's fine for him, he had a great sporting career, and you know, what would he know about mental health, or, you know, going through a tough time. So I think I wouldn't change anything, Joe. I think your sporting career is more than medals. Like, I look at like Lee Keegan and all these guys, they had amazing sporting careers and they live amazing memories. And you don't need a medal you don't need to have a medal on your, I suppose, placard inside your house to know what you've done in your career.
100%. Aidan, great stuff. Congratulations on the Laochra Gael. Enjoy it as much as you can on Thursday evening. It's great.
Cheers.